Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm talking about Pokemon TCG Pocket and the regular Pokemon TCG together. Obviously, Pokemon TCG Pocket is a game that's focused around being mobile and a mobile game and separate from the regular Pokemon TCG. And that means that the cards are completely different, which is really cool. That's what makes Pokemon TCG Pocket what it is. But as a fun thought experiment, I figured we should talk about what cards would be good from Pokemon TCG Pocket in the regular TCG. If you don't know, I imagine pretty much everyone knows this, but in Pokemon TCG Pocket, the HP and damage is lower and the deck size is lower. There are just a lot of differences, but most of the cards are weaker in Pokemon TCG Pocket. The trainers are generally weaker as well, so most of the cards will not be good, but I wanted to take a look through and see which ones would be good. And this will be within a standard format, or theoretically, it could be like this card could be okay in standard, but like theoretically really good if we had cards on standard caliber power levels. But regardless, we got the promos first. There are the 7, I think, that are maybe like some like Mankey is unique and stuff, but Mankey is obviously not very good. Potion is obviously not good. Potion's directly worse. Potion says it's an item, heal 20 from one of your Pokemon. Potion is a regular card. It says heal 30. I actually don't know what art this is. This art, okay, from Breakpoint is this one, heal 30 from one of your Pokemon. So obviously that's worse. X speed is like a worse switch. Reducing retreat costs. This is an interesting card, but it's obviously not very good. Hand Scope's kind of interesting. There are cards kind of like this and could theoretically be usable, but it's not great. Pokédex, again, pretty bad. Pokeball is a really weird. Some of these cards don't work in the regular Pokemon TCG, and Pokeball wouldn't unless you did something like crazy, like reveal your whole deck and then like sorted your whole deck and then shuffle into like sort all the basics out and then shuffled the basics and then got one of those. And that's really weird. And the Pokeball doesn't reveal. Pokeball's kind of interesting because it doesn't reveal the card to your opponent. Honestly, Pokeball in like standard could be okay. It's worse than Nestball, obviously, generally, but there are occasional times when it's better. And as an extra nest ball, it might be what you want. Realistically, it probably would be pretty bad. Also, this is kind of weird because there's Pokeball in the actual game. I think this Pokeball is better than the other one. I'm not sure. Neither one's great, but it would like cause weird stuff with erratas and some very weird stuff. Like this potion might actually heal 30 or change the other one to heal 20. So as I said, this is just like a thought experiment here, but yeah, Pokeball might be okay. Professor's Research would be bad. A draw 2 on a support is obviously terrible. But red card would actually be like completely broken. If you don't know, so red card in pockets, your opponent shuffles their hand to their deck, draws 3. I said that damage and HP is smaller, but so is hand size and deck size. So red card has a smaller number than the actual red card. And so red card says your opponent shuffles for the regular TCG, your opponent shuffles their I can't talk. They shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4. So this is directly better because you want the smaller card to disrupt them more. And this card's banned and expanded. It's kind of insane. Turn 1 going first is the idea. I think it does deserve the ban. I mean, expanded is obviously not in a great spot right now, but I do think the ban is warranted. However, with this, it definitely is turn 1 going first. Your opponent goes from their 6-card hand, maybe 5 if they've chosen to bench 2 Pokemon, because this does encourage your opponent to bench bench Pokemon turn 1 if they're going second, which is actually really cool. I do like that about Pokemon TCG Pocket, and I do actually like red card. It feels very fair, but if this was in the regular Pokemon TCG, it would be super broken. So that's kind of interesting to consider. Then, as I said, the rest of these, Lapras EX, I guess, is a card that we could talk about because it is unique, but obviously would not be really good. Lapras EX is, I guess, a tanky basic Pokemon in Pocket. It's not like super tanky, but it's certainly got decent bulk, and it's 140, which is lower than any of the 2 prize Pokemon in Standard. So these Pokemon need to be really strong to be playable. And 80's like barely any damage, so that card's kind of bad. Looking at Pokemon, most of these are pretty bad. Butterfree is not great, kind of playable. Caterpie has this, again, the random attack, which would be super janky to play, actually, but probably, instead of protection, very good. Most of these Pokemon are not, very good. Some of the cheaper attacks, because you have guaranteed energy in Pocket, so Beedrill's stats are actually, kind of okay. They're not great. It's certainly not a card that you'd want to play, but It's on a similar power level to actual cards. I guess it's kind of comparable to this card, which isn't a standard card, where it's 80 and poison for one and has 140 HP, which is just objectively better. But this is an absolutely insane. Like, it's not. It's like this Beedrill. It's just like a weird, really really weird card. But regardless, Speedrill is not that good, but it is closer to on power level than some other things. Same thing like Venusaur. But Venusaur EX is so bad. 190 HP on a stage 2 EX would be so bad in standard, because like the actual Venusaur EX has 300. What is it? 340? It has 340. So a lot less here. Then we have the Rosies are just like really bad. Really bad in standard. Victory Bell's kind of interesting. Stage 2s in Pocket are, I mean, they're not bad. Some of the best techs in the game are stage 2s, or cards in the game. And so they're playable, but they're not like as speedy or techable. You need to really be basing your entire deck around that stage 2. But with Victory Bell, you could play this. If it's in the active, you can gust a basic opponent's benched basic Pokemon. This is okay. It's really similar to the Weavile, I think. I'm not really sure. Yeah, this is actually very similar. This Weavile isn't very good. It's not terrible. It's playable. Yeah, the only deck I've seen it played in is Palafin, which I just see it occasionally. Apparently, this person played it in Hydreigon as well. It's like decent with Pekkarunt EX, but people generally prefer to instead play more Pekko for like within Palafin for some easier switching options. But it's an interesting card. Not great, but could be kind of sort of playable. Within fire type, like these are just, none of these cards would be playable at all, which is kind of crazy. Then we have water, and I'll be going through the different sets. So we got genetic. Well, there's only 2 sets, but genetic Apex and the smaller Mythical Island set. The reason I got inspired to do this video is because of some of the Mythical Island cards. But something like Articuno EX is just really bad. Its damage output is not a lot. Omastar is kind of interesting. Omastar does 70 during your opponent's next turn. The defending Pokemon cannot attack. However, this is also like another card, the Lickitung from 151, I think. Yeah, which is very similar to this card. Like, also doesn't see any play. So, well, it theoretically is like kind of good. It's not great, right? And it's outclassed again, like a lot of these cards. Greninja is a card that definitely could be played, though. Its HP is really low. Like, if you look at Greninja, there's no Greninja in standard. Well, okay, there's a bunch of Greninjas in standard. There's I forgot. There's just a bunch of random Greninjas, but there's Radiant Greninja, which is a Radiant Pokemon, and there's like a bunch of EXs. But the most recent Greninjas, I mean, they've all had more HP than this, so it's a little low. This is most comparable to Inteleon, though, from Chilling Reign, and this card is a really interesting one with quick shooting, and it's also the same ability as Decidueye GX from something, I don't remember. There's also the Water Shuriken Greninja, which is kind of interesting. They kept it. This is the same art, obviously, same name for its attack, but this one has its ability that says once during your turn, you may discard a water energy from your hand to put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Also, I mentioned this before with when Greninja was announced, that they changed the terminology from damage counters to damage, which is kind of, I don't know, it's a thing. But regardless, then these are the same ability. You have less HP, you have like worse stats, but the ability is still decent. Inteleon is not, like, on its own, it wasn't good. It saw a lot of play, but it saw play within the deck with the other Inteleon, and then more importantly, the Drizzle, which is just like a really good card. However, this is definitely decent. It's not a great card, but it could be good to build up damage with a stage 2. I can't really think of a card like this in standard. There's like Meowscarada EX, but that's not great, and it's a little different as well. This Greninja is cool. It's kind of like Frostlass as well. So I do think this Greninja could be playable. It could be fun. It could be decent. Something like Pikachu EX in Pocket, though. It's such a good card in Pocket. Not so good in a standard, probably. Magneton's ability is kind of interesting. Actually, I didn't even realize and make this connection before, but you can accelerate. Okay, so Pocket obviously has different mechanics. The energy zone is not in the regular TCG either. I would mention it some, but I don't know exactly how you do this. This is kind of weird, but so you kind of just like get these energy, which presumably become energy card. I don't really know exactly how you do this. There's an energy zone in the my first, I don't remember, like the my first Pokemon battle thing. I really don't know almost anything about it. I know it's kind of like Pocket, and it's for new players, and it has an energy zone, but it's completely different than Pocket. You play energy cards from your hand into the energy zone, I believe. So that's the thing. But regardless, I don't know how this would work exactly, but we'll just say you spawn like an energy card from out of nowhere onto this card, and or from like a pile next to you, right? You have just a bunch of energies. You just take the one, attach it here, and then you get an energy on it. And then this is kind of like the Sandy Shocks EX, which is an interesting card to talk about. Has not seen play recently within Raging Bull Ogerpon, but was a really important card for Raging Bull EX and its ability Magnetic Absorption. It says if your opponent has 4 fewer prizes remaining, you may attach a basic fighting energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. And so it just accelerates energy to itself 1 each turn, and Magneton does as well, and they're, like an ancient version of Magneton, Sandy Shocks. So Magneton's ability is interesting. It could be like useful with, I don't really know, to be honest. It's kind of weird, but it's definitely a cool card here that might be usable. I can't think of exactly how you would use it, but it's a really interesting card to consider and could be decent in standard. Then you have, I'm just like looking at these guys are just not great. Gengar EX is really weird, or the regular Gengar, or Psyduck. I forgot Psyduck, didn't I? Psyduck's actually really good. Supporter locking your opponent. There is the Badoo coming out. There's been a lot of talk about that. I think it's a little overblown, but it is a really scary looking card. And doing 1/4 trainer lock with item lock, psychic with on a basic with Badoo. But Psyduck here does supporter lock for 1 colorless and does 10 here. Oh, also the weakness numbers are different. There's a lot of different stuff. I guess the weakness doesn't have to be ×2 in the regular TCG. It just is, but regardless. So you'd have Psyduck here doing 10 and supporter locking, which could be really good. Supporter locking in standard just isn't really something we see very often. The only card I know that can supporter lock off the top of my head is the Crobat from, I want to say Temporal Forces, but that might be the wrong set. But some Scarlet Violet set, I'm pretty sure. And it can supporter lock or item lock. Supporter lock is something that'll consistently slow down your opponent, but like reduce what they can do, but it's not going to cripple them either in a way that item lock could. So I don't know if Psyduck would be really good or okay or kind of bad, but Psyduck's definitely an interesting card to consider. Same thing with the Gengars. Of course, they have really low HP values, especially the EX 170 is just super bad for a 2 prize Pokemon. 2-point Pokemon, I don't know, it's kind of weird to describe these cards, but definitely an interesting card here. Then we have Hypno. Hypno says, once on your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active is now asleep. And in Pocket, it's okay, but, Pokemon are hard to set up. You can't search out evolution Pokemon, but with the regular TCG, you could search this out, have this as like a one-of, and it could really annoy your opponent, but it might also be bad. I'm not sure. Hypno seems decent, though, in the regular TCG. There's a lot of coin flips in Pocket, obviously, and Hypno it's a really coin flippy Pokemon. You could play 4 of it in the regular TCGs. You could have a bench full of it, essentially guarantee sleep every turn, but then your opponent still needs to flip to see if they wake up from sleep, which is a 50% chance to happen. But Hypno is definitely a pretty interesting card to consider in the regular TCG. You don't know if it would be any good, though. Pokemon like Jinx is like a card I could see them printing in the TCG. That wouldn't be super strong. But Gardevoir is an interesting Pokemon to consider here, because you compare this with the Gardevoir EX. This would be super weird. So obviously Gardevoir EX accelerates energy from the bench. Gardevoir accelerates it from the energy zone, and then you accelerate to your active psychic Pokemon. You can play this within the Gardevoir deck, and then when the Pokemon's knocked out, you discard it, presumably. So in the energy zone, it's extra energy. So all of a sudden, you'd start your deck with 7 psychic energies in your deck or something, and then by turn 5, you'd have 10 psychic energies in your deck, not in your deck, but in your discard pile, which would be super weird. Maybe I don't really know. Obviously, this is kind of weird, but Gardevoir is definitely an interesting card to consider. Its HP is super low, and so that's not great, but it definitely could be decent. A very solid ability. The best cards are probably the ones with abilities or effects that just aren't damage, obviously. Then we have Hitmonlee is like a fun card, but it's not very good. It wouldn't be very good in the regular TCG, unfortunately. It's not great in Pocket either. It's a card I like. But then we have Weezing is kind of interesting. Unfortunately, not that good. It's kind of like there are some different cards that poison. The best one, I guess, would be Brute Bonnet. It's not that. Dragonite's such a weird card. Probably the weirdest one to implement in actual TCG, maybe, because it selects I can't speak. Selects random Pokemon. Sorry, I've been I don't know. I've been like really busy lately, so my brain's kind of fried. But no, it selects random Pokemon from your opponent's board. It does damage to them. I don't really know how you do that. No. This card would actually be kind of crazy in a Regidrago. It'd be super weird, and maybe not good, because if you really want to if you really want to damage their active and also damage the bench some, you'd be using you'd be using Dragapult EX, but this would be really interesting. It could be like really bad, but it's a really unique card and could be good in that deck. Pidgeot isn't great. It's like the boss stuff, I think. I don't remember. I don't care enough to look it up. Then there's like Meowth and Persian, but obviously they wouldn't be great. There's a really weird Ditto card. There's just some weird cards here. Porygon is like not great. It's kind of like the Morpeko, but it would be better than it is in Pocket, where it's essentially useless. Chinchino is actually interesting. Chinchino could be decent in the regular TCG. Obviously, Chinchino, there's the good one from Temporal Forces played in Lugia V-Star with Archeops, which is good, but you wouldn't really play it with that. You'd have a max bench of 105, so it'd be 150. But this is the same damage as Trapgos EX, which Trapgos EX can do all the way up to, with 8 bench Pokemon, it could be doing 240, which is obviously really, really solid. With a reverse Slurge is what you'd be looking to do here, and that could be kind of interesting. And so that's cool. This Chinchino could be useful there. I don't know if it'd be particularly good, but it is a really unique Pokemon. That's so different from you over double your bench size with Area Zero Underdepths from Pocket, so you're just doing way more damage, and so for that reason, it could theoretically be good. Then we have the supporters. Koga's like weird. I don't really think this would be good, but it's weird. Giovanni wouldn't be particularly good either. Obviously, they're extra damage supporters. Sabrina's like terrible. Blaine wouldn't be good. I mean, there aren't any good Ninetales, Raptor, or Magmar as far as I'm aware. Lieutenant Surge is a really interesting one, moving energy from your bench lightning Pokemon to your active Raichu, Electrode, or Electabuzz. I don't really think there are any good Pokemon for any of these cards. If I'm like, there are some okay ones, but I don't think it's anything super strong, but it's an interesting supporter. And then Misty it's really weird. We like flip the coin to the energy. It's probably bad. Water has Max Caliber, but it's a really interesting supporter to say the least. There's also the Mew from the set, which is also in Mythical Island. Mythical Island then has a bunch of cards here. Obviously, most of these would not be super good. Celebi EX is not great, but it's kind of funny. It would have a similar funny factor in the regular TCG. But Superior is the one that I was most excited to talk about because doubling your grass energy is really cool. Got really low HP here. Even for Superior, which hasn't had a card in a long time, it's substantially lower than any of its cards it's had. And then you have, it's like the Venusaur, though. From Shining Legends, I think. Yeah. And its ability is like the same thing, doubling grass energies. I think Superior would... oh, wait, no, that wouldn't like stack. A Stacky doesn't really do anything. Regardless, so you have Superior here, which is really interesting. It could be good. Grass is... well, this is only to grass Pokemon. So Venusaur would double it on Regidrago V-Star, which could be good, but Superior could be good with I can't think of any good grass Pokemon in Standard right now. Let me do a quick check. We got TLS Ogerpon EX, I guess, would be really interesting. So you could just get a bunch of energy and just be one-shotting stuff with that, but that'd be kind of weird and kind of janky. And Spathway EX, that seems kind of bad because that's not really using grass energy in the first place, but you could do that. But grass is not great. I mean, grass is very bad, but it's an interesting card to consider. Superior, it's really cool. It's not a great type, but it's kind of cool. Then we have Vaporeon moving. Vaporeon's really interesting because it's Armor Rouge, but for water, and it's also an evolution. could do some cool stuff. It's actually not Armrouge because Armrouge works for any Pokemon type. So this only goes from water Pokemon to water Pokemon, which isn't ideal. It's something I'm not actually a big fan of in Pocket. I don't know what other people's thoughts are on it. I think most people would agree that ultimately, if it could essentially accelerate to like UEX or something, it might cause problems for the game. But regardless, I think Vaporeon is a cool card in Pocket. I don't think it's great, but it's cool and could be a card that could see play in the regular TCG. Water is not. What are good water Pokemon? Water isn't like a super strong type right now. It's okay. Like Baxcalibur, that could be fun. There's some pretty cool water Pokemon. Obviously, Palkia V-Star is pretty good. You can maybe like throw in something like Kyurem VMAX. Like Kyurem VMAX is, VMAX are in obviously a really rough spot right now. It probably wouldn't be great, but it is an interesting Pokemon to consider, and it could be decent. And then we have MewEX. This card looks kind of familiar. Obviously, the other MewEX is way better. Literally the exact same attack. I guess its weakness isn't as bad. But then you have way more HP, and you also have Free Retreat. You do have Side Shot on this one, but Side Shot is replaced with the ability on MewEX. So yeah, the other MewEX is way better. Behemoth is another Pokemon based on bench Pokemon, which could be like way stronger in regular TCG, but wouldn't be that good. Aerodactyl EX. This card would actually be kind of insane. Now that I think about it, this card might be actually broken in the regular TCG, or at least very good. Obviously, you need the Old Amber as well, because the card's called Antique Old Amber in the regular TCG, which is something. But regardless, this ability works from the bench, and it says your opponent can't evolve their active. That's kind of insane. Well, from their hand. So that's from their hand. So that's kind of insane. You can't evolve from the deck. I wasn't sure if it said that. So you have to. It's from hand. So your opponent can't like evolve the Charizard EX necessarily. They might be able to if it's on the bench and they're playing Pidgeot EX, but then they probably don't have Pidgeot EX up if that's in the active. So Aerodactyl EX is really interesting, especially with this combination with Gastrodon, which also works from the bench, which turns off abilities of Stage 2's. What's it? I have not played this card. I don't really know if people have played it much, but yeah, so it turns off bench Stage 2 abilities, so that'll turn it off if it's on the bench. Aerodactyl stops them from evolving in the active, so that really shuts down a lot of their options. Its HP is really low for a 2-price Stage 1. It's like half the amount you want, but it's still a really interesting Pokemon to consider. It could be really good and kind of annoying and super broken, as I said. Pidgeot EX could do... They could eat, but yeah, it'd be bad pretty much no matter what. Pokemon Flute's actually pretty good. It's like Echoing Horn, which we saw a little while ago. It's kind of like accompanying Flute. It's kind of related to that, so that would be pretty good. Like it would be as good as it was. It's literally essentially a reprint of an exact card we had. Leaf is like, what is this? But the Expeditioner, real bad. Blue it's not great. Mythical Slab is kind of weird. Ultimately, probably not very good. It's a really weird card. But it could be okay in the TCG. I mean, Psychic is it's not like a bad type. It's in a weird. There's not really like a super dominant type. I mean, Dragon's very good. Psychic definitely has a bunch of interesting Pokemon. Could be like decent in something like Gardevoir, but again, hard to implement. But definitely interesting card to consider. But there are some really cool cards, some really broken cards, just a small handful. And Pocket has some cool things. Some people have theorized we'll end up getting a set that's like Pocket, that's an actual set, kind of like Pokemon Go. So we'll see if that happens. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all that good stuff. And as I'm excited to see you in the next video.